The Islamic Republic in Iran has allegedly been sending ballistic missiles to Russia as Russia continues in its ongoing fight with Ukraine. Now, to chat about this in more detail is the host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, a lawmaker in Tehran confirmed that the transaction has indeed occurred. In exchange, the Kremlin offered what? Agricultural commodities?
Just support. That's all they need. The Islamic Republic has learned masterfully how to work around the pressures of the West. I mean, under the 4 years of the Biden administration, there's been less pressure, but the Islamic Republic doesn't know who's going to come into office next. They don't know what's going on, so they'd rather find their own new trading partners, and that's exactly how they have raised over $100 billion in the last 4 years under the Biden administration. Once the sanctions were removed, they learned how to do all sorts of things: sell oil to partners like China and Venezuela, sell weapons to Russia, as we've seen in this latest report. And these are, they're not strange bedfellows anymore because they have one thing in common: the fact that they want to stick it to the West. So rogue nations of the world unite, and you see the Islamic Republic now has a list of trading partners it can go to replace the West and having to do any sort of economic exchange with the West.
Now, the war between Israel and Hamas continues in Gaza. Lisa, a shooting on Sunday claimed the lives of 3 Israeli guards who were killed at the Allenby crossing along the West Bank Jordan border. Will we see another ceasefire anytime soon?
Doesn't look like it, Hal. And this, latest terror attack, it happened along the Jordan border, as you said, something we haven't seen in a while. So, this do-it-yourself type of jihadism has also sprung up again. It had never really quieted down from that, but there has been a call from Sinwar, who is now basically the de facto head of Hamas, to say we will begin the suicide bombings again. We will do the car rammings again, all around the world. By the way, Hal, this is targeting Jews around the world and others. We have seen attacks in churches. We have seen attacks in public places in Europe, at music concerts. They want to have their message heard. To the useful idiots on the college campuses in the United States, or protesting on the streets of Manhattan or Los Angeles or wherever they may be, this is what we're up against. They will kill any one of us in the name of jihad. And these 3 individuals who died from this terror attack is just the latest. As we know, the Israeli hostages still being held by Hamas, over 100 of them, and no signs that Hamas is ever going to be interested in any sort of ceasefire.
A Pakistani man living here in Canada is facing up to 20 years in prison for allegedly planning a mass shooting in New York in support of the Islamic State. Lisa, the 20-year-old Mohammed Shahzeb Khan, is accused of plotting an attack on a Jewish center in Brooklyn.
Yes. So they recruited this man, 20 years old, Pakistani national, living in Canada. The FBI, together with Canadian police, tracked the phone calls where he was planning on killing as many Jews as possible. And he thought, well, New York is a great place for that goal. And he wanted to attack the Chabad headquarters in Brooklyn, where many people from around the world, Jews and Christians alike, believing in this spiritual rabbi of Chabad who passed away. That's the headquarters of their organization. Go to pay pilgrimage. They go to visit. They go to pray. He wanted to do a mass shooting there to get the highest number of casualties. And thankfully, that plot was foiled with this collaboration.
The Israel Defense Forces say more than 50 rockets were fired by Hezbollah in Lebanon to the northern part of Israel. And fortunately, most of the rockets were intercepted by air defenses. Tell me more about that.
Right. This is the front that you're not hearing about. We talk about the front with Lebanon, between Hezbollah and Lebanon, and Israel beginning. That's southern Lebanon and northern Israel. Every day since October 8th, there have been missiles coming in from Hezbollah into Israel, and that's not really talked about. There has been pinpointed targeting, hitting of targets by the IDF. And hitting Hezbollah targets throughout the last almost year. But we do see an escalation from Hezbollah coming into Israel. Now, many have been evacuated from that area. They were sent back to their homes and evacuated once again, because we do believe that this escalation will continue for some time. But really, Hal, just to underscore the number of fronts that Israel is forced to fight, all being puppeteered by the Islamic Republic, the regime inside Iran that is manipulating and funding and training and sending supplies to these proxy terror organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas and others in the region.
Another terror group being funded by the Islamic Republic, the Houthis. Lisa, the Houthis claim to have destroyed another U.S. drone. And that drone was apparently detected operating over Murray province. Now, this drone, the MQ-9, can operate, for 24 hours at altitudes of up to 50,000 feet. But apparently, allegedly, this one was shot down.
Right, and it's a little reminder, right? Iran's regime is saying we can reach you to the United States and really targeting our assets in the region to say this war is not just focused on Israel, but it is focused on the big Satan, the United States, and the little Satan, Israel. And if you recall, that statement was made by the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was the architect of the Islamic Republic that came into Iran in 1979, toppling the Shah, the king, the Shah of Iran back then. And that has been their goal ever since. So when we do see an attack against the Houthis, as much as the White House has tried to create this daylight between the United States and this war, standing back and just referring to it as a war that Israel is fighting, the United States is involved as well. And when our assets are being targeted in the region, it pulls us into a war whether we like it or not.
The United States has agreed to demands by Iraq, Lisa, for the removal of their military forces from the Middle Eastern country. Most of the 2,500 U.S. troops will apparently be withdrawn by September of next year.
Right. Another withdrawal. And of course, this is something where the United States, regardless of administration, really wants to tread carefully, hopefully having learned a lesson from the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Hal, we talked about all the different proxy groups that the Islamic Republic is funding and controlling. If and when we do withdraw from Iraq, it's another win for the Islamic Republic inside Iran because they have sent their insurgencies, they have grown their influence inside Iraq. And of course, by withdrawing, by removing our presence, by removing that seat at the table that we have inside Iraq, we do give that influence up for grabs to the terror insurgencies that are supported by Iran's regime. And just to connect the dots, if you look at all the different countries in the Middle East that the Islamic Republic has been able to influence and occupy, they have manifested the Islamic State that they wanted. We went crazy and bonkers in 2014 over ISIS, the Islamic State, and that was a small terror group, a mom and pop shop, if you will, compared to what the Islamic Republic, the actual Islamic State, the Shiite Islamic State, has been able to accomplish over the last 45 years.
Has the Biden administration or any other administrations, even maybe Trump before that, talked about potentially taking out the Islamic Republic, the government in Iran, which is funding a lot of these proxy wars right now, similarly to what the United States did with taking out Saddam Hussein many years ago?
Right. And it's a great question because you wonder why we wouldn't just remove the head of the snake. You and I have been speaking for how many minutes now, and almost every ailment around the world is being supported by this terror exporting regime. And yet the United States in the last three administrations, Trump being the only one that actually put pressure on them, but actually didn't, he stopped short of calling for regime change. He wanted behavioral change through pressure and sanctions and other punitive measures. The Obama administration, the Biden administration, if there should be a Kamala Harris administration, are all very welcoming of the Islamic Republic in the sense that they want to sit down. They want to use diplomacy as the only tool in their toolbox to normalize relations with Iran's regime. Now, before they even began, so when you talk about President Biden, for example, even as a candidate, he ran on getting back into an Iran nuclear deal with no preconditions. He didn't say, I will wait to see X, Y, and Z if they do behave, if we're seeing that the centrifuges are not spinning, if we see that they are, not exporting terror, funding these terror organizations, none of that. So when you're telling your enemy that it's in the bag for them, I mean, we're not going to see those behavioral changes, and we're going to see a continuation of that rogue behavior when we're emboldening them, empowering them, and actually allowing them to raise billions of dollars to use in their terror sprees. So really, it's a matter of positioning, it's a matter of policy, it's a matter of rhetoric, and all of that has been favoring the Islamic Republic for the last almost 2 decades.
Lisa, as tensions continue to escalate between Taiwan and China, a pair of German warships will be making their way to the Taiwan Strait in the coming weeks. The presence of the two ships will more than likely receive condemnation from China, obviously, because it claims sovereignty over the 170-kilometer wide waterway and the adjoining island of Taiwan.
Yeah, leave it to Germany of all nations to want to create this parade of, sending a clear message to China that, we're here too. It's interesting. I think it's interesting that we're seeing different nations try to poke and prod and see, how far China will take this or how upset they will be at this next provocation. But we'll see what happens when Germany takes a shot at it. We know that the United States also wanted, to have presence there. The Philippines also very concerned. South Korea as well. Japan has also expressed that concern. So this is obviously something that's very much escalating. Again, I will bring everyone's attention to the fact that we are in an election year, so we might see things move very quickly because they're running out the clock and Biden will be out of office. So we'll see what will happen between now and January. It should be a very interesting few months ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering if a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is imminent. What are your thoughts?
Well, if you were China, that was something that was on your to-do list and on your bucket list. This would be the time to do it. And I hope that we're both wrong in assuming that China, a rogue state, would take advantage and really, use this vulnerability that has been created by in the United States. And when we had vulnerability under the Biden administration in terms of their approach and their positioning with China, but now it's lame duck. They know he's out. Where is he? He's old. He's senile. What will actually happen? What will be the consequences? And then as we know, Hal, our enemies are very much keen on Kamala Harris becoming president. Iran's regime has stated that. Putin has stated that. I'm sure China would love that because they know that there are fewer consequences with a Democrat, especially Kamala Harris type of presidency than there would be under a Trump presidency, as we saw in the last administration. So again, it's going to be very, very interesting. But if rogue nations are very much looking into the United States and thinking right now is the weakest we will be unless there is a Kamala Harris presidency, which will probably continue in the same ideology and policy as the Biden administration.
Okay, let's talk about the big debate, which is coming up Tuesday in Philadelphia between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Your thoughts as we head to the November 5th federal election?
I think, it's going to be interesting. I think Kamala Harris is going to arrive very polished, actually. She hasn't given any interviews. She gave the one with CNN where she showed up with her VP pick. I think she's going to be well prepped and memorized and try to dispel, the accusations of her not being able to speak publicly, not being able to formulate, coherent statements about her policy, not even being able to communicate her policy. Actually, in the last 24 hours, her campaign updated their website to have some policy on there. So I think they are out to defend themselves and all the accusations of weakness and lack of policy, and they will try to reverse that. Donald Trump will show up and be Donald Trump, and I think it's difficult coming in as a white man who's trying to defend his former lead against Biden, but now a lot of the polls are showing her in the lead or it being very close. We can't really listen to polls. If you recall the polls between Hillary and Trump, and they were all wrong, and Trump won that election. So it's going to be interesting. I think a lot of people want to give her a chance. She's a woman. She's a woman of color, as many people are using the phrase. And I think that as much as she was VP, and the polls were very low. I mean, opinion polls on her were very low. She has been able to rebrand herself as a breath of fresh air, as somebody who's going to bring joy, somebody who's going to bring something new, even though she's actually in office right now. But PR is amazing, right? So and they've done a great job at really shaping public opinion. The media has fallen into line with that as well as social media. So I think it's it's an uphill battle for Trump, who had a very significant lead before she was announced as the candidate. So we shall see. It's going to be very interesting, and we can talk about it next week after we watch.
So do you think Trump's plan of attack will be going after a lot of the policy with Kamala Harris, who's part of the Biden administration, saying, look, you've been in power these past 4 years. What have you done with it?
Correct. And I think that's really the low-hanging fruit, to say, if you're claiming that you will do X, Y, and Z, why haven't you done it? And you're almost setting out to fix the problems you created. So why did you create them in the first place, right? So I mean, we've heard a lot from her about, yes, it's a bad economy. Well, it's your economy. It's the border, the problem. It was your border. You were in fact border czar. So yes, there will be a lot of duh moments. And if he's able to control the conversation and be very well behaved, and I say that because there are many people who are voting on emotion, and it's unfortunate because it's not a smart way to vote. We should vote on policy and the direction and the ideology that this country will take. But there are a lot of Americans, especially young Americans, especially women, a lot of the women in swing states who will define this election and the outcome of it, voting on emotion. And I think that he should, his team should rein him in, behave yourself, speak nicely, and kind of dispel the accusations against him the same way that she will be working to dispel those accusations against her. So it should be very entertaining, to say the least.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the debate. She's our political expert and foreign affairs expert as well, host of the Foreign Desk. Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Hal.